Santino Greco found his secretary at sunrise, half dead in the sand, with one hand still closed around the broken glass he had almost drunk from the night before. For 1 second, the most feared man on the Gulf Coast did not move. He only stared at Alara Voss lying where the tide kept reaching for her ivory dress soaked through, her black hair tangled with seaweed, blood drying near her temple, and bruises darkening both wrists like someone had held her down while the ocean tried to finish what they started. Then he saw the glass in her hand. A sharp piece of crystal was wrapped in a white cocktail napkin, pressed so tightly into her palm that the edge had cut her skin. Santino pulled it free with shaking fingers, and his breath stopped. The rim of the glass had a black chemical burn exactly where his mouth would have touched it. Poison. Behind him, his guards ran across the beach, shouting his name, but Santino could not hear them. He was staring at the proof in his hand and remembering the night before, when Alara had knocked that same champagne glass away from his lips in front of 200 guests, and he had looked at her like she had humiliated him. He had told her, cold enough for the whole ballroom to hear, "You ruin everything you touch." Now she was bleeding in his arms, and the thing she had ruined was beginning to look less like his pride and more like his murder. "Ilara," he said, dropping to his knees beside her. She did not answer. Her lips were faintly blue. Her lashes were wet with salt water. Her breathing was so weak he had to bend close to feel it against his cheek. Santino Greco had watched men die without blinking. He had ordered punishments with a calm voice. He had built an empire on fear, silence, and control. But when he lifted Alara's body from the wet sand, rage cracked through him so violently that one of his own guards stepped back. "Who touched her?" He roared. No one answered. Then something fell from Alara's soaked purse. A folded letter, sealed in torn plastic, stained with blood and seawater. Santino saw his name written on the front in her neat handwriting. Not Mr. Greco, not boss. Santino. He opened it with one hand while holding her against his chest with the other. Most of the ink had blurred, but one line remained clear enough to cut through him. "I made him hate me tonight because hate was easier than watching him die." Santino read it once, then again. Before he could understand it, another object slipped from the torn purse and landed near his knee. A white lapel flower from his own jacket. The same flower Alara had pulled from his suit before midnight while he accused her of overstepping. Its stem was cracked open now, revealing a tiny metal transmitter hidden inside. Santino's rage went still. Poison in the glass. A transmitter in his flower. Alara left to die with both pieces of proof in her hands. This was not an accident. This was not a drunk fall after a party, and whatever Alara had been trying to stop, she had known enough to write him a goodbye before it happened. Then her eyes opened for half a second. "Santino," she breathed. He bent close. "Who did this?" Her fingers tightened weakly around his shirt. "Don't trust." Her voice broke. "Don't trust the men who clapped." Her eyes closed again. Santino froze, because the night before, when he threw Alara out of the ballroom, every man he trusted had clapped for him at midnight. 17 hours earlier, inside the glass ballroom of the Halcyon Bay Resort, Santino Greco raised that same champagne glass while 200 people watched him like he was a king about to bless the year. Santino Greco was not a king, not by any law that mattered, but every port captain, nightclub owner, private banker, and underworld courier along the Gulf Coast knew his name. He controlled docks, resorts, shipping lanes, and men who could make a problem disappear before sunrise. He wore a black tailored suit with no tie, a silver watch, and the cold expression of a man who had trained himself never to look surprised. Behind him, fireworks waited over the ocean. In front of him, guests smiled with the nervous respect people gave dangerous men when they needed something from them. At the edge of the crowd stood Alara Voss, his private secretary of 5 years, wearing a plain ivory evening dress under a black blazer because even at a celebration, Alara looked like she was ready to correct a schedule, cancel a disaster, or quietly save someone from their own arrogance. She had a headset hidden behind one ear, a tablet pressed against her side, and a calm face that had fooled people for years. Everyone in the room thought Alara was cold. Santino thought she was impossible. Rocco Vale, his head of security, thought she was a problem in heels. Bastian Corelli, Santino's operations director, thought she was the last wall standing between Santino Greco and death. Alara knew exactly what she was. She was tired. She was in love, and she was standing 10 feet away from a man about to drink poison. The champagne glass in Santino's hand had come from the wrong tray. Alara had approved every service detail herself. The midnight champagne trays were supposed to have silver ribbon around the handles. This one had black. The server carrying it had entered from the west service corridor, not the main kitchen path. The rim of Santino's glass had a thin, dark burn near the crystal edge, too faint for anyone watching the stage, too clear for a woman who had spent 5 years reading death in small mistakes. A different secretary would have screamed. A bodyguard would have reached for a gun. Alara moved through the crowd like she was about to make one more embarrassing correction. That was how she had kept him alive for years. She had learned that if she made protection look like incompetence, the people trying to kill Santino did not change the plan fast enough. A spilled drink looked like clumsiness. A cancelled meeting looked like overreach. A switched car looked like scheduling confusion. A removed lapel pin looked like disrespect. Every time she saved his life, she spent a little more of her dignity in front of him. Every time he survived, he understood her less. "Miss Voss!" Rocco hissed as she passed him. Rocco was broad, clean-shaven, and proud in the way men became when they believed only guns counted as protection. "Don't move," Alara said. "He's about to toast. I know. Then stay out of it." Rocco reached for her arm, but Santino saw it from the stage before Alara did. His eyes sharpened. Rocco's hand stopped in midair. It was one of those things that kept Alara trapped in hope. Santino could cut her with words until she went home and cried without making sound. But if another man touched her roughly, something violent woke in him before pride could bury it. He cared in reflexes and denied it in sentences. That was why she had not been able to stop loving him. Santino lowered his glass an inch when he saw her coming. His jaw tightened. "Not now." His voice was quiet, but the nearest guest heard it and shifted away. "Yes," Alara said. "Now. I told you not to interfere tonight. And I told you the west. Service corridor was not cleared. My security chief cleared it." "Then your security chief missed something." Rocco's face reddened. Bastian Corelli, standing near the stage with his polished silver hair and expensive navy suit, watched Alara with an expression so mild it made her stomach tighten. Bastian never looked angry when plans failed. That was what made him dangerous. Santino leaned closer, the champagne glass still in his hand. "If this is another one of your instincts, swallow it." Alara looked at the glass, then at his mouth. "I wish I could." He lifted it again, and she struck it from his hand. Crystal shattered across white marble. Champagne splashed over Santino's shoes. The ballroom froze as if someone had cut the music with a knife. For 1 second, nobody breathed. Alara stood in front of Santino with her hand still raised, and all she could think was that his lips had almost touched the rim. Almost. She had made it in time. Again. Santino stared at the broken glass, then at her. His face did not show fear. It showed humiliation, and Alara knew humiliation turned faster into anger than fear ever did. "You ruin everything you touch," he said. The words landed in the exact place where an older wound already lived. 7 months earlier, after she canceled a private dinner because a kitchen order had changed after approval, he had taken her into a service corridor and said, "You are useful, Alara, but do not mistake useful for irreplaceable." She had smiled then because smiling was easier than letting him see her break. She had gone home that night, taken off her earrings, sat on the bathroom floor in her black dress, and written her resignation letter with shaking hands. Then an alert came through her phone showing a last-minute driver change on Santino's morning route, and she returned to the office before sunrise because heartbreak, apparently, had to wait until he was safe. Now, in the ballroom with everyone watching, he had found another way to say the same thing. "You ruin everything you touch." Alara's throat burned. Her face stayed calm. "At least you are still alive to hate me," she said. Several guests gasped. Santino's eyes changed. Not enough for anyone else to see, but Alara saw everything. Confusion moved under the anger. Then pride stepped over it. "Get out! Mr. Greco, out!" Rocco stepped forward. Santino did not look at him. "If you touch her again, you lose the hand." Rocco froze. Alara looked at Santino for one dangerous second, and the pain of that protection almost made her weaker than the insult. He could do that. He could protect her from Rocco in front of everyone, and still send her away as if she had not just saved his life. She bent down, picked up one broken piece of the champagne glass with a white cocktail napkin, and slipped it into her purse. Santino saw it. His eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "My job," she said. "You were dismissed from it." The line should have hurt less because he had said worse. It did not. "Then this is the last thing I do for you." She turned before her face could betray her, and walked toward the side doors. Behind her, Santino forced the room back into motion. "The year will not stop for a broken glass," he said. Guests laughed because powerful men taught people when to laugh. The music returned. Fireworks climbed over the ocean. At midnight, everyone clapped. Alara was already in the East Service hallway by then, one hand wrapped around the glass shard inside her purse, and the other holding the torn white lapel flower she had pulled from Santino's jacket 15 minutes earlier. The flower had not come from Alba Ren, the florist. The stem was too heavy. The pin had a metal core. She had removed it while straightening his collar before he walked to the stage. Santino had caught her wrist and said, "Do not start tonight." She had answered, "I am trying to let you finish it." He had not understood. He never understood in time. Her phone buzzed once. Unknown number. 5 years we blamed luck. Tonight we checked every failed door. It was always you. The message vanished before she could screenshot it. Alara stopped near the laundry exit. For the first time all night, fear rose clean and cold through her body. They knew. Whoever had been trying to reach Santino had finally connected the pattern. The dock meeting she canceled. The hotel suite she changed. The courthouse route she switched. The phone call she cut. The drink she spilled. The lapel pin she removed. Every failed attack had one thing in common. Her. A door opened behind her. 2 men in resort staff jackets stepped into the hallway. The stitching on the sleeves was black. Hotel staff wore gray stitching. Security staff wore black. One man smiled. "Miss Voss?" Alara turned to run, but a third man came from the service stairwell. A hand clamped over her mouth. Another twisted her shoulder back so hard white pain shot through her arm. They dragged her through the laundry exit toward the beach path, where the fireworks covered the sound of her shoes scraping concrete. "The safe route," one man said against her ear. "The real one, not the one you put in the file." Alara bit his palm. He hit her across the face. She fell to her knees in the sand, still gripping her purse. "Do you know what he said after you left?" the man asked. "He kept the party going. Didn't even follow you." Blood filled her mouth. "Good." He crouched in front of her. "Good? It means he's alive." Another blow knocked her sideways. Pain exploded through her ribs. She tried to breathe and tasted salt air. The men wanted a route, a phone code, the name of the driver she had switched. The last security change she had hidden from Bastion's office. They did not understand that Alara had stopped keeping the whole truth anywhere except inside her own head. Files could be stolen. Phones could be hacked. Staff could be bought. She had made herself the living lock because no one had thought a secretary was worth breaking. Until now. "You love him?" the man asked, noticing the way her eyes moved toward the ballroom lights. Alara looked up through hair and blood. "That is not your weapon to use." He kicked her again. "He hates you." She almost laughed. "I know." That was the terrible part. She did know. She knew every impatient look, every cold correction, every public dismissal. She also knew the coat he had left on her chair when she fell asleep over his port files. She knew the school fees he paid for Emilio Grant's daughter and disguised as insurance. She knew he had canceled $1 million contract because a client called her just the secretary, then pretended the numbers had changed. She knew the man under the boss. She had loved him in fragments because fragments were all he allowed the world to see. The man grabbed her chin. "Last chance." "No," she whispered. "To reach him, you go through me." His expression hardened. That was the plan. They beat her until the fireworks blurred into stars, then dragged her to the waterline and left her half in the tide, staged like a drunk accident after a rich party. Alara tried to keep one hand above the water. In it was the napkin-wrapped glass. In her purse was the torn lapel pin and the resignation letter she had written months ago but never sent. The letter had changed over time. It was no longer only resignation. It was a record of apologies he had never asked for and truths she had never been able to say. If she died, Maybe he would finally read what he had refused to hear while she was standing in front of him. The tide reached her cheek. Her last clear thought was not that she was dying. It was worse. Santino would think she left angry. He would think she ruined one more night and disappeared. He would never know that even there, even bleeding into his ocean, she still wanted him to live. Morning made the beach look innocent. Santino walked alone behind Halcyon Bay, just after sunrise, because a harbor contact named Jace Morrow had asked to meet him near the private dock. Jace claimed someone inside Santino's organization had bought staff access to the Réveillon event. Santino had slept less than 2 hours. He kept hearing Alara's voice. "At least you are still alive to hate me." He had looked for her after midnight. Once near the bar, once by the balcony, once at the service doors. He told himself it was because he wanted the glass shard back. He told himself it was because she had made a scene, and he needed to understand how bad the damage was. He did not tell himself the truth, which was that the room felt wrong without her standing somewhere near the edge, quietly correcting the universe before it could touch him. The tide was low. Wet sand shone under the pale sun. Then he saw something near the foam. A shape, ivory fabric. Dark hair. Santino stopped. His body knew before his mind accepted it. He ran. Alara lay on the sand with waves washing over the hem of her ruined dress. Her face bruised, her lips faintly blue, hair tangled with seaweed, one wrist raw where someone had tied or held her down. Her hand was curled to her chest, locked around a white cocktail napkin. "Ilara." Santino dropped to his knees so hard sand sprayed across his shoes. He touched her throat. A pulse, weak, too weak. "Ilara, open your eyes." She did not. He lifted her head onto his arm and saw the bruises near her jaw, the swelling at her temple, the blood dried in her hair. Rage came first because rage was easier than terror. Then her fingers twitched around the napkin. He opened it with shaking hands. Inside lay the broken piece of champagne glass. On the rim, exactly where his mouth would have touched, was a black chemical burn. Poison. Santino stared at it, and the world that had made sense to him for 5 years cracked down the middle. He grabbed her soaked purse and emptied it onto the sand. A cracked phone, a key card, lipstick, wet papers, his torn lapel flower. He split the pin with his thumbnail. A tiny transmitter was wired inside the stem, a signal device, a marker, a way to tell someone exactly where he stood at midnight, while fireworks hid the sound of death. Then he found the letter. It was folded tight inside a torn waterproof sleeve. Blood and seawater had blurred most of it, but the line near the bottom was clear. "I made him hate me tonight because hate was easier than watching him die." Santino made a sound that did not belong to a boss. It was grief arriving before pride could stop it. Rocco and 2 guards came running from the resort path. "Boss!" Rocco shouted. Santino lifted Alara into his arms. She felt too light. That frightened him more than the blood. "Ambulance," Santino said. Rocco stared at her. "Now!" Santino roared. Rocco ran. Santino looked down at Alara's face, at the woman he had sent away, the woman who had walked out holding proof of his attempted murder and her own broken heart. "You do not get to die after making me understand," he whispered. "Do you hear me? Not like this." Her lashes trembled once, maybe from the wind, maybe from his voice. "Stay," he said, and realized with a sick twist in his chest that it was the first time he had ever said the word to her without meaning work. The ambulance arrived fast because fear still obeyed Santino Greco. He rode with Alara to St. Aurelia Medical Center, one hand wrapped around hers, the other holding the broken glass, the transmitter pin, and the wet resignation letter like evidence in a trial against his own blindness. Dr. Leona Varr, the emergency physician, took one look at Santino and said, "If you stand in my way, she loses time." That was the only command in the city strong enough to move him. The trauma doors closed. Santino stood in the hospital hallway with sand on his suit and Alara's blood drying on his cuff. Rocco stood 10 feet away, pale and silent. Tomas Ilyan, Santino's driver, arrived still wearing last night's wrinkled black suit. "What happened?" Tomas asked. Santino unfolded the letter. The top read, "My resignation." Below, broken by water stains, were sentences that turned memories into wounds. "I am sorry for canceling the dock meeting. I am sorry for changing your hotel room. I am sorry for cutting the call from Marseille. I am sorry for spilling your drink in the orchid room. I am sorry for switching the driver outside the federal courthouse. I am sorry for taking the flower from your jacket tonight. I am sorry for making you hate me before I had enough proof to make you believe me. Santino read each apology and remembered the anger he had attached to it. The dock meeting she canceled without explanation. He fired her before sunrise. 2 hours later, Rocco found gunmen in the container yard. Santino called it luck. The hotel suite she changed after security cleared the room. He told her paranoia was not competence. That night, the original suite camera feed was hacked from the service floor. He called it caution. The courthouse route she switched. He called her impossible in front of Thomas and told him to ignore her. Thomas looked at him now, face tight with shame. "Boss," Thomas said. "The courthouse route. I should have told you years ago." Santino turned slowly. "Told me what?" "You ordered me to follow the original plan. I followed her message instead." Santino's eyes hardened. "You disobeyed me?" "Yes," Thomas held his ground. "Because she sent one word with the new route. Please. She never said please. I thought if Miss Voss used that word, she was scared." Santino felt that sentence tear something open. Alara never said please. She had learned asking made her easier to dismiss. "What was on the original route?" he asked. "A stolen construction van under the overpass. It burned later. Shell casings inside. I told myself it was unrelated because that was easier than admitting she saved us, and I stayed quiet." Santino looked at Rocco. "How many times did she change routes?" Rocco swallowed. "A lot. And you never asked why?" "I thought she was undermining me." Santino's voice went cold. "No. She was doing your job before your pride let you see the threat." Dr. Varr came out after 43 minutes. "She is alive," she said. The word struck Santino harder than any bullet ever had. "She has a concussion, 2 cracked ribs, a dislocated shoulder we reset, bruising around the wrists, and water in her airway, but not enough to suggest drowning came first. She was assaulted before she reached the water. Someone placed her there after. Staged accident," Santino said. "Yes," Dr. Varr studied his face. "She woke for a few seconds before sedation. She asked if you drank from the glass." Santino closed his eyes. Then she said, "Don't trust the men who clapped for him at midnight. Does that mean something to you?" It meant the whole room. It meant Bastian clapping with calm hands. It meant Rocco. It meant port captains, donors, bankers, security men, guests who smiled while Alara was being dragged toward the beach. Santino went into Alara's room alone. Machines breathed softly around her. Her bruises looked darker under hospital light. Her scraped hands lay outside the blanket. Those hands had built his days. Put coffee on his desk. Corrected his contracts. Removed files he was not ready to sign. Straightened his cuffs. Pushed death away from his mouth. He sat beside her and remembered the night she had fallen asleep over Miami port files. He had stood in the doorway, watching her cheek pressed to her folded arm, hair loose from its clip. She looked younger asleep. Less guarded, he had taken off his coat and laid it over her shoulders. The next morning, she returned it dry-cleaned without mentioning it. He had said, "Do not make sleeping in my office a habit." She had said, "Do not make saving your port contracts so late a habit." He had almost smiled. Then he buried it because smiling at Alara felt like admitting she had reached a place in him he did not control. Now he touched her hand with the careful fear of a man who had learned too late what her silence had cost. "I thought you were fighting me," he said. "Maybe I needed to think that because the other answer made me dependent on you." Her eyelids moved. He leaned forward. "Alara," her eyes opened a little. Pain clouded them. "You didn't drink?" "No," her breath trembled. "Good. Who did this?" "They know." "Who knows?" "That I changed the door." "What door?" Her lips barely moved. "The one death uses to reach you." Her eyes closed again. Santino sat there until the nurse made him leave. When he walked out, his rage had direction now, but something deeper than rage had begun to rot inside him. Regret. Not the clean regret of a man who had been tricked. The ugly regret of a man who had been loved and still managed to make love lonely. By noon, Santino was inside Alara's office at Greco Tower, standing in the small room where she had spent 5 years holding his life together without ever letting it look like love. The office was exactly like her. Quiet, clean, disciplined, and almost painfully controlled. 2 monitors sat on the desk. A leather planner lay closed beside a silver letter opener shaped like a feather. There were no flowers, no family photographs, no soft evidence that Alara Voss existed outside schedules, danger, and the needs of a man who had never learned how to ask for care without turning it into command. Rocco Vale stood by the door with his hands behind his back, but he no longer looked like the proud security chief who had spent years resenting her. He looked like a man afraid of what he might find. "What are we looking for?" Rocco asked. Santino did not take his eyes off the desk. The truth she thought I would not believe. He opened the first drawers. Contracts, staff lists, legal summaries, meeting approvals, port schedules. Everything was flawless. Of course it was. That had always been the reason he could not get rid of her. Alara never failed where an employer could measure her. She never lost a file, never missed a deadline, never mishandled money, never leaked a name, never forgot a guest, never confused a location. Her official work was perfect. Her mistakes only happened around him. His route, his drink, his jacket, his hotel room, his car, his call, his body, his survival. Santino found the bottom drawer locked with an old brass lock instead of the office digital system. Alara never used old things unless she wanted them outside his network. He took the silver letter opener, forced it into the lock, and broke it. The drawer slid open. Inside was one thick folder with a white label in Alara's neat handwriting. Errors. Santino opened it. For a moment he did not understand what he was seeing. Then the dates began to arrange themselves inside his memory, like knives laid out on a table. Dock, suite, driver, call. Drink, dinner, elevator, courthouse, flower. He opened dock first. A canceled meeting notice, a map of the container yard, a security camera maintenance request that had never passed through Rocco. 2 guest names added after approval. At the bottom, Alara's handwriting in red ink read, Southgate camera down. 2 names added from operations access. Rocco not informed. Need proof before telling him. Santino opened suite. Original hotel room. Replacement room. Service elevator records. Camera feed rerouted to an outside server 14 minutes before Santino's scheduled arrival. Alara's note. Original room compromised. He will call it paranoia. Need proof before telling him. He opened driver. Temporary driver assigned by internal request. Driver's license tied to a false address. West exit safer. Alara's note. Thomas will listen if I use please. I hate that I may have to. Santino's fingers stopped. Thomas had said the same thing at the hospital. She had used please because she was scared, and even her fear had been planned carefully enough to save his pride. Rocco sat down slowly in the chair across from Alara's desk. She kept records of every change. Not records, Santino said, his voice low. Warnings. He opened drink. It was from the Orchid Room dinner 8 months earlier. He remembered it too clearly now. The private dining room, the red wine, the senator's wife laughing, Alara bumping his arm and spilling the glass across his cuff. He had taken her aside afterward and said, "One more public mistake, and I will replace you with someone who knows where her hands belong." She had only said, "Yes, Mr. Greco." In the file was a catering list. 1 bottle delivered separately. A cork photo with a black mark. A note from Alara. Could not remove bottle without alerting source. Spilled glass instead. He looked at me like I had embarrassed him. Better a stained cuff than a closed casket. Need proof before telling him. Santino closed his eyes. For years he had thought her silence was stubbornness. Now he understood it was discipline. She had swallowed every defense because defending herself too early would have warned the men trying to kill him. He found a hidden compartment behind the drawer. This one was smaller. The folders inside were labeled unsent. Rocco immediately looked away, as if he knew before Santino did that this was not strategy. This was a wound. Santino should not have opened them, but Alara had almost died carrying truths he had refused to hear when she still had the strength to speak. He opened the first note. Mr. Greco, today you called me careless because I canceled the doc meeting. I wanted to tell you I saw the south camera go blind and 2 new names appear on the guest list after approval. I wanted to tell you I was scared. But scared women do not last long in your building, so I stayed useful instead. He opened the next one. Today you said I was useful, but not irreplaceable. I laughed in front of you because secretaries are not allowed to bleed. Then I went home and wrote my resignation. At midnight, a route alert appeared on my phone, and I came back because apparently even heartbreak has to wait until you are safe. Santino had to set the paper down. The line found him with brutal accuracy because he remembered that night. He remembered saying it. Useful, not irreplaceable. He remembered the polite smile she gave him afterward. He had thought she was calm. He had thought she was strong enough not to care. He had never considered that she might have gone home, sat alone, and broken where no one could use the breaking against her. Another note waited beneath it. You left your coat on my chair last night because I fell asleep over the port files. You pretended not to know. I pretended not to notice. We are both cowards in expensive clothes. Another. You paid Emilio Grant's daughter's school fees from a fake insurance account today. You told Rocco the family should not know the money came from you. You try so hard to look like a monster, and you do not understand how badly you fail when no one is watching. Another. A man called me just the secretary in the West conference room. You said nothing. 10 minutes later, you canceled his contract. I know you called it business judgment. I also know the numbers had not changed. Santino looked at that one for a long time. He had canceled the contract because the man's laugh had stayed in the room after Ilara left. He had told himself it was discipline. He had told himself a man who disrespected staff would disrespect terms. Both things were true, but not the whole truth. The whole truth was uglier and softer. He had cared enough to punish the insult, and been too proud to comfort the woman who heard it. The last note in the folder had no date. I think I love him. Not the name. Not the fear. Not the man everyone bows to. I love the man under the boss. I wish the boss did not hate me for keeping him alive. Santino folded the note with hands that had killed men without shaking. Rocco spoke carefully. Boss? Do not. I should have listened to her. Santino looked at him. So should I. He took the errors folder, the unsent notes, and every file tied to the Réveillon event. Then he turned toward the door. Find Nico Farron, the bartender. Find Mara Solon from event management. Find the florist. Find everyone who touched the tray, the flower, the jackets, or the cameras. If one of them lies, bring me the lie with their teeth still in their mouth. Rocco hesitated. And Bastian? Santino's face went still. Let him think we are grieving. Nico Farron was found in the resort bar, shaking so badly that the ice scoop rattled in his hand. He was young, thin, and too frightened to pretend courage. Santino placed the broken glass on the metal counter between them. Tell me about the tray. Nico swallowed. It had a black ribbon. The normal trays had silver. Miss Voss noticed first. Who ordered it? Operations. Bastian Corelli. Nico nodded quickly. His office. I thought it was special service for you. I didn't know. What did Ilara say? Nico's voice dropped. She asked who carried it. I told her a new server. She asked why one glass had a mark near the rim. I said maybe polish. She looked scared then. Santino leaned forward. Ilara does not look scared. She did for half a second, Nico said. Then she told me if the glass broke, not to touch it. She said, if I am wrong, I want to be embarrassed. If I am right, I want him alive. Then she walked toward you. Santino looked away, because the room suddenly felt too small. Mara Solon, the resort event manager, came next. She was in her 50s, elegant, stern, and tired in the way women became after years of watching powerful men ask them to rewrite ugly things nicely. She did not sit until Santino offered the chair. Miss Voss was not drunk, Mara said before he asked. She was not unstable. She was not making a scene for attention. Who asked you to say that? Bastian Corelli's assistant. He wanted a statement saying she was emotional, possibly intoxicated, and escorted out after disrupting the toast. You refused. Mara's eyes hardened. I have watched too many women get erased from rooms after telling the truth. I do not help men clean blood off stories. Santino held her gaze and nodded once. What did you see? After Miss Voss left the ballroom, 2 men followed her toward the beach service path. They wore staff jackets but not hotel jackets. Hotel stitching is gray. Their stitching was black. Rocco's face lost color. Security jackets. Mara looked at him. Yes. Santino did not turn from Mara. Would you say that in a room full of my men? Yes. Even if Bastian is there? Especially then. Alba Wren, the florist, was found in her small shop arranging white lilies for a funeral. When Santino placed the torn lapel flower on her counter, she touched her throat. That is not mine. You prepared the flower for my jacket. Yes. White gardenia, silver wrap, no weighted stem. This stem has a metal core. A transmitter. Alba stepped back. Then someone replaced it after delivery. Who accepted delivery? She checked her tablet. A man named Lennox, operations badge. Every road turned back to Bastian. Every clue arrived wearing the calm face of a man Santino had trusted, because Bastian never sounded emotional. That was how poison survived in powerful rooms. It spoke reasonably. By evening, Santino returned to the hospital with more truth than comfort. Ilara was awake, sitting up slightly in bed, a gray cardigan over her hospital gown because she had refused to look as wounded as she felt. Her face was bruised, one shoulder strapped, her wrists wrapped lightly in bandages. Her eyes followed Santino as he entered. You read them, she said. Yes. The unsent notes too? Yes. She looked toward the window. The sun was lowering behind the parking garage, turning the glass orange. Those were not evidence. No, Santino said. They were what I should have noticed without needing evidence. She laughed once, short and tired. Do not become gentle because you feel guilty. I do not know what to do with kindness when it arrives after damage. Then tell me what to do. That is your problem, Santino. You always think love is something you can handle if someone gives you instructions. He took the hit because it was deserved. Why did you stay? Her fingers tightened on the blanket. At first, because if you died, worse men would own this city. Bastian. Bastian and every man like him. And later? She looked at him then, and for the first time in 5 years, she let him see the cost of the answer. Later, because I saw the part of you they had not killed yet. Santino sat down slowly. You loved me? Ilara's mouth trembled once. I loved the man who stayed after everyone left and approved rent for a widow who would never know his name. I loved the man who canceled a contract because the client insulted me, then pretended it was math. I loved the man who left a coat on my chair and insulted me in the morning because kindness gave me too much power over him. Her eyes filled, but she did not look away. I loved you in pieces because that was all you allowed anyone to see. Ilara. No, let me finish once. Santino went still. I did not save you because I wanted a ring. I did not save you because I thought one day you would wake up and reward me for suffering. I saved you because I loved you, and because I believed the city would become crueler without the lines you still refused to cross. But every time I saved you, I lost something. A little respect, a little pride, a little chance that you might ever look at me and see a woman instead of a problem. One tear slipped down her cheek. This time she did not wipe it away. Do you know what the worst part was? Santino's voice was barely there. Tell me. The worst part was not that you were angry. It was that sometimes I could see you care, and then you buried it so fast I started wondering if I had imagined it. The truth hit him harder than accusation, because it left him nowhere to hide. He had cared. Before the beach, before the proof, before he knew about the poison. He had cared when she worked late. He had cared when Rocco spoke to her sharply. He had cared when another man called her just the secretary. He had cared so much that he turned it into criticism because desire felt like weakness, and Ilara already knew too many ways to keep him alive. You did not imagine it, he said. Her tears stopped for a second. That might be worse. Why? Because then you had enough feeling to hurt me, and enough control to pretend you didn't. Santino had no defense. I loved you badly before I knew I loved you. Ilara closed her eyes. That is not enough. I know. Good. The next morning, Santino went to the small white chapel beyond the resort dunes. Father Callum Reed, the old priest who ran it, opened the door before Santino knocked. He was a thin man with rolled sleeves, tired eyes, and the calm expression of someone who had heard men confess only after the damage was done. She said you might come, he said. Santino stepped inside. Ilara was here? Before midnight. Father Callum led him to the donation box near the candles and unlocked it. Inside was a sealed envelope wrapped in plastic. On the front, Ilara had written, For the man who thinks anger is proof of strength. Santino almost smiled and almost broke at the same time. Inside was an access list, a timeline of every changed route in the last 6 months, and a symbol drawn in black ink. A broken crown inside a circle. Santino knew it immediately. Bastian Corelli's private crew. Men used for work Santino refused to authorize. Beneath the symbol, Alara had written, "If I am wrong, I lose my job. If I am right, he lives." Another page waited behind it. "I think they know it is me. Tonight they watched me watch the glass. They watched me check the flower. They are not aiming at him first anymore. They are aiming at the person who keeps changing the door. If I do not return, tell him I was not trying to control his life. I was trying to give him enough life to choose who he wanted to be." Santino folded the page slowly. "Did she say anything else?" Father Callum nodded. "She said love should not make a woman invisible." Then she laughed a little and said, "She had chosen a very inconvenient time to learn that." Santino left the chapel with the envelope inside his jacket and went to the old harbor warehouse where Bastian's private shipments were due for inspection. Rocco came with him, shame following like a second shadow. Jace Morrow, a dot contact who sold information when fear paid better than loyalty, waited beside a stack of sealed crates. Santino placed the transmitter pin on the wood. "Talk!" Jace looked at Rocco, then at Santino. Bastian ordered the jackets. "Beach access. Camera blackout. Special tray. Flower replacement." Rocco's jaw tightened. "Using whose clearance?" Jace looked sick. "Yours." Rocco stepped forward. "No." "Your son's debt did," Jace said. The warehouse went still. Santino turned to Rocco. "Explain." Rocco's face drained of pride. "Bastian found out my son owed money in Tampa. He said if I gave him one open clearance code, he would settle it. I thought he was moving cash through the resort. I did not know he planned murder." "You thought," Santino said. Rocco lowered his head. "I thought Alara was making me look weak. Every time she changed security, I saw insult, not warning. I let my pride make me blind." Santino wanted to break his jaw. The old Santino would have done it. The man Alara had been trying to save stopped him. "You will confess publicly." "Yes." "You will protect her until this ends." "Yes." "And if one more man touches her because you were too proud to listen, I will not kill you in anger. I will bury you in the law so slowly your son learns your shame before your name." Rocco nodded. "I deserve that." "No," Santino said. "She deserved better. That is the point." Bastian made his move before sunset. A message went to Santino's inner circle, port partners, resort witnesses and donors. Emergency review at Halcyon Bay Resort. Evidence indicates Alara Voss manipulated security protocols, staged disruptions, and may have attempted to poison Mr. Greco before blaming loyal staff. Attendance required. Santino read it in Alara's hospital room. She was sitting in a chair now, wearing a gray cardigan over her bandages. "He is going to call me unstable," she said. "Obsessed, controlling, in love with you and angry you did not love me back." Santino's face hardened. "He will not say that in front of me." "He will," she said. "Because parts of it are true enough to make the lie sound clean." "You are not going." She looked at him. "You still think protection means deciding where I stand?" He stopped. The old Santino would have argued. He would have called it strategy. He would have made her safety another room she was locked inside. "Do you want to go?" he asked. Surprise flickered across her face. "Yes." "Then we go slowly." That was the first apology she almost accepted. The Halcyon Bay ballroom looked different in daylight. Without fireworks, the ocean beyond the glass walls looked too honest. The marble had been scrubbed, but Santino still saw the place where the glass had shattered. Bastian Corelli stood on the stage, silver-haired, calm, expensive, performing concern for men who preferred lies with good posture. "We are here," Bastian said, "because loyalty must survive uncomfortable truth." For years, Miss Voss altered Mr. Greco's routes, touched his drinks, cancelled his meetings, and isolated him from proper security. Last night, that pattern became dangerous. Santino entered through the rear doors with Alara beside him. Her hand rested lightly on his arm, because cracked ribs made pride expensive. Every head turned. Bastian paused only half a second. Santino saw it. "You should be resting, Miss Voss," Bastian said. Elara answered before Santino could. You should be running. A murmur moved through the room. Bastian smiled. You see? Drama. Santino walked to the stage and opened a black evidence case. No. Timing. He placed the poisoned glass on the table. Separate tray ordered through operations. Nico stepped forward. I saw it. He placed the transmitter pin beside it. Replaced lapel flower. Hidden signal device. Alba Wren lifted her chin. Not my flower, he added Mara's statement. Fake security jackets. Camera blackout. Beach path access. Mara spoke from the side aisle. I saw them take her. Bastian laughed softly. A group of frightened staff trying to please you. Santino lifted the errors folder. And 5 years of records kept by the woman you were trying to erase. He opened the file. Dock meeting, shooters, hotel suite, camera hack, courthouse route, arm trap, orchid room drink, poisoned bottle, réveillon toast, poisoned glass. Every time I survived, Elara Voss had made what I called a mistake. He looked at the room, at every man who had laughed when she corrected him, every man who had smirked when he scolded her, every man who thought a woman's silence meant she had no defense. Every man in this room laughed at her mistakes because I allowed them to. The truth is, every mistake she made was a warning I was too proud to read. Bastian's smile thinned. She kept secret files on you. That is not loyalty. That is obsession. Obsession wants ownership, Santino said. She wanted proof. Rocco stepped forward. His voice shook, but he spoke. Bastian used my clearance code after blackmailing me over my son's debt. I gave him access. I did not know his plan. My pride helped him. Ms. Voss kept closing doors I opened. Bastian snapped. Weak man. Yes, Rocco said, but not weak enough to keep lying for you. Santino held up the chapel envelope with the broken crown symbol. Your private crew. Bastian's face finally cracked. She planted that. Elara stepped away from Santino. Pain crossed her face, but she stood on her own. This had to be hers too. I planted nothing, she said. You did what men like you always do. You mistook silence for emptiness. You thought because I did not defend myself, I had no defense. Bastian's eyes narrowed. You loved him. That is all this was. A secretary dreaming above her place. Santino moved, but Elara raised one hand. He stopped. The room held its breath. Yes, Elara said. The admission landed harder than denial. I loved him. But loving him did not make me poison his glass. It made me break it. Loving him did not make me control his roots. It made me change them when men like you were waiting at the end. Loving him did not make me weak. It made me quiet long enough to gather proof while everyone in this room called me careless. Bastian had no clean answer. Santino looked at his guards. Take him. As Bastian was dragged down from the stage, he smiled one last time at Santino. You think a proposal will fix this? She will never know if you love her, or if you just owe her. The words entered the future exactly where they were meant to. Santino saw Elara hear them. Her face stayed still, but now he knew stillness did not mean nothing. After Bastian was taken away, Santino turned back to the room. Elara Voss did not betray me. She protected me from the men I trusted. She is not unstable. She is not obsessed. She is not a servant who forgot her place. He looked at her, not the audience. She was the only person brave enough to stand between my life and my arrogance. She kept me alive while I was busy breaking her heart. Elara looked away first. Public truth, when it arrives late, can hurt almost as much as public shame. 4 weeks passed before Elara returned to the beach. She did not return to Greco Tower. Santino offered her a new contract, a new title, full authority over security review, and a salary so large most people would have mistaken it for respect. She read the offer at the private recovery house near the coast and pushed it back. I will not return to the place where I was only valuable when I was useful. Santino accepted it. Then do not return. She studied him, suspicious of easy surrender. No argument? I am learning the difference between wanting you safe and wanting you under my control. Her eyes lowered. I do not know who I am when I am not preventing your funeral. Then find out, he said. I will wait. Waiting did not come naturally to Santino Greco. He knew how to act, command, threaten, punish, move money, move men, move entire nights around a decision. Waiting felt like standing outside a locked room with open hands. But Alara had spent 5 years loving him in silence. He could spend weeks learning how not to turn love into pressure. He learned small things because he had missed too many large ones. Alara hated black coffee, though she had carried it for years because his meetings began before sunrise. She liked cinnamon tea and toast too dark at the edges. She hated orchids because luxury hotels used them to hide the smell of bleach. Sharp glass sounds made her fingers curl. Being called brave made her tired. Brave is what people call women when they want permission to keep asking more from them, she said one evening. He never called her brave again. When her ribs hurt, he placed medicine nearby and left the room so she would not have to perform weakness for him. When she walked outside alone for the first time, he did not follow, even though every instinct in him screamed to. She turned from the path and looked back at the window where he stood. He stepped away. Later, she said, "That was difficult for you." "Yes. Good." He smiled. She almost did too. Slowly, the love became less dramatic and more dangerous in a quieter way. Not danger from enemies, danger from being known. Alara saw him trying and did not reward him too quickly. Santino saw her flinch and did not make her explain every wound. They began again, not as boss and secretary, not as savior and saved, but as two people standing in the wreckage of what pride and silence had cost them. On the 29th morning, Alara asked him to walk with her to the place where he had found her. The beach was bright, the tide low, the air warm with salt and sunlight. Santino walked beside her, not ahead. She noticed. "You are learning. I am trying. Those are not the same." "No," he said. "But one has to come before the other." They reached the waterline. Alara looked at the waves for a long time. "I thought I was going to die here." Santino's hand tightened around the small velvet box in his pocket. "I know. No," she said. "You know what happened. You do not know what I thought." He stayed quiet. "I thought after everything you would never know. You would think I left angry. You would think I ruined one last night and disappeared. And I hated myself because even then, even there, I still wanted you to know I loved you." Her voice broke on the last words, and this time she let it. Santino closed his eyes for a second. When he opened them, he took out the box. Alara saw it immediately. Her face did not soften. It became careful. "Santino, I am not asking yet." "Good," she said. "Because before you ask me anything, you will answer me honestly." He held the box closed. "Ask." She turned to face him fully, bruises fading but not gone, eyes clear enough to protect herself now. "Are you asking because I saved your life?" "No." "Because you feel guilty for every time you hurt me?" "I will feel guilty for that even if you never forgive me. But guilt is not love." "Because you found out I loved you before you deserved it?" "No. Your love does not make me entitled to you." "Because marrying me makes the story look clean after everyone heard what Bastian said?" Santino's answer came harder. "No, I do not want a clean story. I want a truthful life." Her eyes searched his face. "Then why?" Santino opened the box, but he did not kneel yet. He wanted his words to stand before the ring did. "Because before I knew the truth, I was already looking for you in every room. Because when you left a meeting, I noticed the silence more than the men still talking. Because I hated your corrections, and still trusted the day less when you were not there. Because I canceled a man's contract for calling you just a secretary, then spent the night angry that I cared enough to do it. Because I left my coat on your chair and pretended I had not. Because wanting you to be warm felt more dangerous to me than any enemy." Alara's eyes filled. Santino stepped closer, not enough to crowd her, only enough to stop hiding. "Because when I thought I was losing you, I was not afraid of dying anymore. I was afraid of living in a world where no one knew me the way you did. You were not my shield, Alara. You were not my secretary, not in the ways that mattered. You were the only person who saw the man I kept hiding under the boss, and you protected him even when the boss punished you for it." "That sounds like gratitude," she whispered. "Gratitude is what I owe you," he said. "Love is what I choose when the debt can never be paid." Her tears finally fell. She did not wipe them away this time. Santino lowered to one knee in the sand. No ballroom, no guests, no men clapping, no fireworks, just the sea, the sun, and the woman who had made him hate her because she loved him too much to let him die. I am not asking you to marry me because you saved my life, he said. I am asking because I want to spend mine learning how to love you without making you pay for it. Alara looked down at him. If I say yes, I will not be your secretary wearing a ring. Then resign. She blinked. He had surprised her. Not from my life, he said. From the place where I made you stand behind me. If you marry me, you stand beside me. If you never marry me, you still never stand behind me again. And if I say no, then I will still protect your name. I will still listen when you speak. I will still clear every room where they made you feel small. Your answer does not cancel what I owe, and it does not change what I feel. She looked out at the ocean. For one painful second, Santino thought she would walk away. He would have let her. That was how he knew his answer had been true. Love that could not survive her, no, was only another form of control. Then Alara looked back at him. I made you hate me because it kept you alive. His voice broke. I know. Do not ever make me prove my love by bleeding for you again. Never. She held out her hand. Then ask me. Santino took the ring from the box. Alara Voss, will you marry me? Not as the woman who saved my life, not as the woman I owe, not as the secretary I finally understood, but as the woman I love and want beside me? She let him slide the ring onto her finger. Yes, she said, but if you ever call my care disrespect again, I will throw more than a champagne glass. Santino laughed softly, unevenly, like the sound had to fight its way through years of control. He stood and touched her face with the careful hand of a man who had finally learned that protection was not the same as possession. They walked back along the beach as the sun rose higher over Halcyon Bay. Santino did not walk ahead like a boss. Alara did not walk behind like a secretary. Their footprints moved side by side through the sand, close enough for the tide to reach both at once. For 5 years, she had protected his life in silence. That morning, he finally stopped asking her to save him and asked her to share the life she had kept alive.